Welcome to the AI First Business Podcast with Tina Yazdi, where we show you how companies, teams, and leaders are turning AI hype into ROI. Kaustav, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here.
So we are here to talk a little bit about your journey and your current focus at Paradime.io. But before we jump in, can you share a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and kind of a little bit about what Paradime does?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Kaustav. I'm co-founder and CEO of Paradime. Paradime is a B2B SaaS startup. We are Cursor for data. What we do is we help organizations do data transformation using AI super fast and cut down development times by about 90%. My background is sort of weird from various different ways. So I started off as an aerospace engineer. So I studied aerospace. I worked in aerospace for about 8-9 years. And then I got bored. And that journey kind of took me between India, and then I was in Germany for a while and so on. Then I got bored and I was like, I need to do a little bit more with my life. I moved to London to go to business school. Turned out business school was a lot of fluff for my liking.
Okay.
Yeah, it was way too much
No
fluff for
offense to
my luck.
anyone.
So I eventually, during business school, I ended up gravitating towards a lot of financial engineering and hard maths courses coming from my aerospace background. Post MBA, ended up at Goldman Sachs, did 2 years there. It almost sounds like I did like a prison time, but it was a good time to kind of hone my skills.
Your words, not mine.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting 2 years that I had there. But then I got an opportunity to run analytics in Octopus. Octopus is the parent company of Octopus Energy. So I had the opportunity to run analytics there. Met my co-founder at Paradime at Octopus, ran data there for 3 years, moved to Revolut at the start of COVID, built a lot of stuff there, including setting up the product analytics team there. And then Paradigm happened, and this is my second longest job.
Would it be fair to say that when you publish your autobiography, it's going to be called Then I Got Bored?
I think that's a fair thing to say because I, as a person, I do get bored a lot. One of my main things is that I think it's also in my LinkedIn bio. I kind of move from crisis to crisis. So that's how my brain works. It's like I can only prioritize.
It's magnetically attracted to.
Yeah, like if there is like one of my interviews, when I was interviewing at Octopus, the CEO of Octopus asked me, you have one sentence to say and tell me who you are. And the one thing I could say was that I fix shit. So that's me. Like I go from shit to shit and I fix things. And that's what's probably going to be my autobiography is like, what are all the things I've fixed?
You mentioned your MBA experience felt too fluffy. Can you elaborate on that, especially because you landed there in search of not being bored? It sounds like that may have led to boredom once again. How did that impact your career path? Like, did that kind of create the shift specifically to where you landed now?
I think the key takeaway for me from an MBA perspective was the connections and the network I made. So my class was 400 people, 70 nationalities. And by the end of the MBA, I had friends all the way from Chile to Japan. And I think that's the value I got out of it. It's not that much about the coursework.
Right,
the coursework ended up being pretty simple in certain terms. And I was not very energized by the coursework.
But by the people you were.
By the people and the human connections you're making. And that was like the real value add for me from the MBA perspective.
Got it. And then in our last conversation, you mentioned this. Could you share how chance encounter when you were actively on a hovercraft in Ibiza led you into the world of data?
It's a very interesting
story.
story.
And how does that relate to LBS, if at all?
You see, what I said is the people,
Yeah.
It's always about the people.
Was this on like an MBA trip?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like it would hovercraft Ibiza.
Exactly. So what happened so LBS, because I saw this amazing opportunity to network and speak with people and meet people. So I thought that by the end of the MBA, I should over-index on the networking piece, not on the grades piece, because coming from India, like whenever you go to university, you kind of get into this mode, you have to get good grades.
I'm Iranian, I really.
Yeah, exactly. You can relate to that. So I was like actively making sure that I was meeting as many people as I can.
Like your whole life?
Yeah, like it was like, I want to meet 2 new people every week or something like that. And it so happened so that I made sure that as many MBA trips and fun
You had
trips.
KPIs for your MBA in terms of like people
Like,
analytics.
Literally, like I made sure that at least I would know everyone in the
Did you
class.
track this?
I
Be
didn't. I
honest.
kind of tracked it probably mentally,
Okay.
but not. I didn't go
It
too
was not an
rigorous with it. There was no.
Kaustav's MBA
There
people
was no Excel
tracker.
sheet. But yeah, like, and then I met a lot of people, and one of them, I was in a trip to Ibiza, and there was like a hovercraft involved in there, and there was like parties, and I met lots of people in there. And 2 years later, I am looking to meet this person who is at Octopus. And we have a common connection, and the person I met was on that hovercraft in Ibiza.
At the same time as you.
The same time as me,
So
and we had a very good conversation, and
while you were on the hovercraft.
And I reached out to her, is like, hey, can you intro me? And she wrote the most remarkable recommendation anyone can ever write.
He can hold a conversation while actively on a hovercraft. He can do anything.
Yeah, it was literally like the most glorious recommendation anyone could have ever written for me. And I was like, wow. So you see, serendipity does happen. And you do that without any expectation of result.
Yeah.
And that's the non-transactional stuff that you do that ultimately leads to a lot of outcomes at a later point in life.
That really resonates with me. Skipping forward in the timeline, one of the things that really stood out to me that you emphasized repeatedly is that when you started Paradime.io, you mentioned it was really critical and foundational to give a lot of autonomy and responsibility to your team. Can you share like what were some of the challenges you faced in the early days of building it out? And how does giving your team autonomy like kind of contribute to the pathway it's taken, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So shaped by my experience at Goldman and also at Revolut and also at
Is Goldman
Octopus.
a high autonomy environment?
It's not high autonomy, but it gives you a lot of high agency. You become very responsible for things. As a result, you kind of do like three people's work. One person is doing like three people's work, and you have to make very fast decisions in very quickly, even if it is 2 a.m. in the morning. Doesn't really matter. And I think that, and then at Octopus, my boss was like, hey, this is the overall problem, fix this. Or when you are at Revolut, you are running a product and you are running it literally end to end. You have full responsibility of hiring, managing, getting the product adopted and everything.
And can I just ask, was that a turning point in experience for you? Like, was that the first time you were in an environment like that at Revolut, for example?
At Revolut, yes. I think having this fully integrated end-to-end team where I'm sort of hustling my way around.
And what do you mean by an end-to-end integrated team?
What that means is that typically in organizations, let's say you are a product owner, you would have to get resources from engineering, you have to get resources from design, you have to get resources from marketing, all of that. So you have to always clobber
like
around
you're
for
campaigning all the time.
You're campaigning all the time. And those teams, those people have their own line reporting managers.
Yeah, and it's not you.
It's not me. Yet I'm responsible for the product.
Yeah.
So it's just like agency without what? So that's sort of a problem you run into. At Revolut, what happened is that I had my own data engineers, I had my own front-end engineers, back-end engineers. I'm responsible for their development, KPIs, and I'm also responsible for adoption of the product and P&L. Which means,
and they were also responsible for it as a result.
And delivering to me. So I'm kind of almost I'm running a mini startup of my own, and you get to see what that looks like. Now, fast forward, when I come to Paradime, it was very clear to me that my job, and it kind of goes back all the way to how I see myself, my job is to fix shit. My job is not to get into people's ways and start to micromanage. I hate micromanaging. I hate being micromanaged.
But can I just say your dedication to fixing shit could very well also lend itself to being a micromanager, right?
When there is a problem, I go into a lot of detail around that problem so that I have like a full view of that. But from a day-to-day perspective, I would not participate. My job is to be a silent observer, and let people do their work, because at the end of the day, my job is to hire the right people and give them the freedom and autonomy to rise and shine.
Yeah, which is a model you saw clearly validated in your time at Revolut.
Exactly. And the thing is that, you might need a little bit of handholding to start off with, but you might not need as well. But ultimately, my job is get out of the way. And every day I'm kind of looking at, okay, how can I get out of the way? Like at the beginning of Paradigm, we would have daily stand-ups where I would be more vocal or participating. Nowadays, I only rarely talk. I'm most of the time sort of listening because people know what they're doing. I don't have to overemphasize on that, and there's no point for me. Many times, like I'm just sitting in the demo and like, how can we do this? How can we do that? That's sort of like bouncing off ideas, but I don't get in the way.
Can I ask you a personal question? What's the best and worst feedback you've gotten as a leader?
Great question. So I think the best feedback is that I would typically get is that exactly that, like he knows his shit and he doesn't get in the way of things and is like always knows. And I think also like I'm very happy to always admit my own mistake. So I'll be the first one to do that. So that's, I think, one of the first things people say about me. The worst thing is that when there is a crisis or something like that and I need details, if you don't have the details for me, I get really frustrated because for me, time is of essence. And at that point, you need to know the details. You need to be very detail oriented. And that when I see somebody is not detail oriented, I get very frustrated and I make my frustration very clear without sometimes giving people the chance to probably over explain themselves. I get very impatient and frustrated.
Got it. Like, give me the punchline, then give me the story kind of thing.
Like,
Yeah.
Go like they call it like the bluff method. Give me the bad news first.
Yeah.
I don't need the good news. I need bad news early and good news late. And a lot of times people miss that and it makes me very frustrated.
Yeah, I can relate to that a little bit. So sorry to any victims of mine. How do you strike the balance between accountability and responsibility? Sorry, autonomy and responsibility.
Yeah, I think it's very simple. You give people an objective. Hey, you need to achieve this by this time. There has to be always a timeline and there has to be an objective.
Yeah.
And then in the process, the real people who are accountable and responsible, they will buy into that. They will own that. And then they will, and at some point, they will tell you things you didn't even know. And I think that's the test. When you have somebody around you who knows more than you, then you know like, okay, it's sorted.
They've internalized it.
They have internalized it. I can move on to other things.
That really resonates. Moving over to the role of AI in kind of business. Yeah. When did you first embrace AI? Like just like maybe in your career generally? And fast forward to Paradime, how has it impacted your company's operation and competitive edge, both in terms of how you operate internally and in terms of what product you build?
Great question. So the first time we saw AI sort of as a true enabler was back in like 2023, like about Q3, roughly Q3.
Was Paradime live?
Yeah.
Yeah. How far into the...
We were just about commercializing.
Yeah. And so, when did you found?
We started in 2021, beginning of 2021. We spent 2 years in stealth. And then towards April of 2023, we started getting our sales motion in place. And then about August, September 2023, had GPT 3.5 came out. So at that point, I kind of saw like, okay, this technology is going to be transformational. Yeah. Already like ChatGPT was like spreading like wildfire all over the place. And I saw that there is a big opportunity here to make to help our target market audience, which is analytics engineers in general, data engineers, data analysts, analytics engineers, how we can actually help streamline their day-to-day workflows using AI.
Do you remember what the first thing you put into production that did that was?
Yeah, so we put into production that, so we announced that we are going to do that.
When did you announce it?
October 2023.
Okay, so right, like that's I think a good example of how fast you are from like identifying to getting it done.
Yeah, like in my head, time to decide and get into action, and the time window is very small. So we immediately said we are going to be doing this. I remember like talking with my designer on a Friday, like, hey, can we create like a launch video? And the launch video was out on a Monday. So she worked it out over the weekend, and then we put it on LinkedIn on Monday.
And what was the product?
It was called DinoAI.
AI?
So we decided to call it DinoAI. It was a very accidental naming of things because we didn't really have much time to kind of think what name. And then Fabio thought that, you know what, dinosaurs, the Paradime logo sometimes looks like the back of a dinosaur. Why not call it DinoAI? I'm like, yeah, we are helping analytics engineers from not becoming dinosaurs. That's my rationalization of the thing.
Was that in the tagline? Don't be a dinosaur?
Almost like saying something in a LinkedIn post, something like that. And then we put it there. And we didn't even know whether there was other product that was called DinoAI or anything. Turns out it wasn't.
There's like DynoDB.
There is DynamoDB.
DynamoDB.
but not DinoDB.
And there's no DinoAI.
There's now.
And what was the response? Just for someone who may not know what this universe looks like, what was the difference between this offering and the current state of affairs to do this kind of work?
So at that point, current state of work, state of the art would be that, let's say if you have to do a data modeling, it would take you 2 to 3 weeks. And our vision was, can we cut it down to a day? That's the kind of impact.
And why does it take that long? Or why did it take
Because
that long?
it's manual. It's a lot of checks you have to do with your database, with your data warehouse. You have to know a lot around the metadata and data structures and the business context of your organization and things like that. So you have to bring a lot of information from various different sources to get a proper data modeling done. And that would take you about 2 to 3 weeks turnaround.
And I guess that's like a fast turnaround time at that time?
It's like an average.
It's an average, okay.
It's an average. And our goal was to cut it down to 1 day. So we launched this in October. Then we went live with the first version of the product in January 2024. And then we saw the whole agentic movement coming along. And then by October 2024, we knew like, okay, we are now moving. So initial product was a very question answer type of thing. You ask the DinoAI something, it gives you an answer and you work with that answer. But it was not like
about your data model,
about your data
like
model, or ask how to write a code and these sort of things. We called it the ask mode. So you're basically asking DinoAI, and DinoAI is...
Did it have other modes?
And now then we launched the agent mode, which means that you no longer have to copy paste the code DinoAI gives you. It automatically writes the code for you now. So it writes the code, it tests the code and all of these things, which means that you cut down development time even more. And that's something that we started working on in October 2024. And by like February, March 2025, we had that product released out, which is agent mode, because by that time, Claude was way more advanced. And LangGraph was there, and a lot of agentic solutions was coming in the market. And all of it sort of comes from the fact that it's a huge point of competitive differentiation for us, because our nearest competitor is AI skeptic. So they are...
Can we name names, or?
If you want, I can. So I'm
asking because I actually don't know who you're...
So we primarily compete with dbt Cloud. So, and while we cater to the audience who use dbt Core, we compete with dbt Cloud as a product.
And what makes them skeptical?
I don't know.
Is it a fact that they're skeptical? Is that you're reading between the lines?
I think in certain places they have mentioned they want to be really careful with AI and things like that.
So just a different philosophy.
It's just a different philosophy, and their product also is pretty much kind of does lip service. So you kind of say lip service, but it's not truly an AI first platform. And we made that transition to the truly AI first platform by like January of this year. And a lot of it, coming to your second part of the question, a lot of it comes from the fact that we also use AI internally heavily, because we run a pretty lean team, but we do the work of 3x the size of our organization. And if we have to do that kind of productivity, we embrace AI tools as a result very heavily within the organization. So from a development standpoint, people are using AI and AI Copilot. So either they're using GitHub Copilot or Cursor or whatever it is needed, they're using. From a DevRel standpoint, people are using Descript and things like that. You record a video, you pass it through AI, get rid of all the ums and ahs and everything, and you process subtitles and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is how I can run this podcast independently.
Right? Then we use other tools like Fabio would record a demo. Fabio is the co-founder of Paradime.
Okay.
So he would record like a technical demo and he'll give it to Parker, who is our DevRel and GTM engineer. Parker would just pass it through a tool, separate the sound, replace the sound with somebody with an American accent, and polish a finalized video. That means all our videos now are very consistent, and that is what a big company would do. And now when prospects look at us, they're like, this is exactly what I would see maybe from a Databricks or an organization of Snowflake or Databricks size, you know?
Yeah. That has like there
is like a
team
finesse.
doing this. Yeah.
It feels like there is a team working on it.
Well, there is a team, just a different type of team.
This is a different type of team. I think they kind of working on their own sort of things. And marketing, like now I use whisper flow, for example, because I speak 110 words per minute. I'm very weird at writing. So I just speak a blog, 10 minutes, 1,000 words, pass it through Claude, polish it, mid-journey, get some images done, Excalibur, and publish on Framer, done. And I think what would previously take me 4 hours, I do it in like roughly 35 to 40 minutes. Again, this whole productivity, transformational.
I think this is a really tangible example of another point you mentioned, which I'd love to get your overall perspective on how AI has leveled the playing field for smaller companies going up against more established ones like a David and Goliath. Can you share more about your observations around that?
100%. So I think if you're a small company, I think one of the things when I speak with other founders and all is that if you are trying to sell to mid-market or enterprise, you have to look like what your competitor looks like.
Cosplaying in a way.
Exactly. Because your buyer needs to see that both the vendors they are considering,
they pass the vibe check.
They has to pass the vibe check. It's like, because they're making a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year investment. So that needs to look like
if your video is questionable, then how would I trust you with my data, kind of thing?
Exactly. Because there's a trust involved, there is a perception involved, and then you need to look like a serious company. And you can use AI to a very large extent to be like a serious company, and I think that's the key point, that it's not about whether you are big or small. You need to look sophisticated. And you need to have that finesse. It's almost like there can be 2 brands of yogurt in the supermarket shelf, but there's a minimum bar of branding you need to have there for your yogurt to sell, because it needs to look like,
it's got to be sexy.
It needs to be sexy. It needs to be eye-catching. It needs to exude. The buyer needs to feel confident. And AI helps you exactly do that, whether you're a 10-person team going up against a 300-person team.
So I have a follow-up question. So that's how it levels the playing field. What do you think it also gives some unfair advantages to smaller companies versus larger companies? I'm thinking of, for example, how quickly you became AI first, as you said, which writing a cargo ship is a bit more difficult than a boat, if you can say it like that. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think it totally depends on how you run the organization.
Okay.
So, for example, if you look at Revolut, they keep launching products after products after product. That's because they have these self-isolated product teams.
What percentage would you attribute to that model as the foundation for being able to do this versus other factors?
There is a very high correlation to being able to do that. That model actually helps you achieve that.
Why do you think that's so rare, this model? I mean, I know Revolut's not the only one who does this, but they're exceptional at it from the Revolut Mafia series, as I'm learning.
I think why people struggle to do that is, again, human beings are human beings. And again, they kind of get conflicted between this autonomy versus agency. And I am the ultimate responsible for this organization. What happens if somebody messes up with something or the other? You get compliance or something involved into every little thing and things like that. So I think it's where companies slow down is having too much process. That is added for the sake of process and for protection rather than for growth.
Can I challenge that?
Yeah, go for it.
It almost sounds like Revolut allows human beings to be like human beings. And the alternative is actually adding layers and layers to create obstacles for human beings. Because I think arguably we're naturally autonomous creatures that are creative and like to have responsibility and get stuff done.
It depends on it has to be a certain kind of people who are good at that.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But when you have that certain kind of people, you hire that certain kind of people and you give them that structure to operate in with some loose guardrails, but very important loose guardrails, they actually rise and shine and they thrive. On the other hand, there are a lot of business leaders and things like that who kind of operate this functional organization, like business units sort of thing, rather than giving the product.
Does Revolut have like no business units at all?
No, it's like all product. It's all product.
So there's no cross-section of like data engineering and then product intersecting with data engineering? No. That's interesting.
So, and that's what I call see, if you kind of think about an organization, you got to put the product at the center.
I completely agree with that.
And then every other function needs to feed into the product.
And is that how Paradime is set up?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the other hand, I have seen organizations where you have the product, but then marketing has its own agenda, sales has its own agenda, customer success has their own agenda. They're all pulling away at the product. But if you break the product down into smaller product and you say like this product team has its own sales organization, will have its own customer success, then they're all invested in that product.
That really resonates.
And as a result, you create agency. Now everyone's KPIs are aligned. Everyone is now invested in making that product successful. And that's the craft of the VP of product to be able to
get there. Just moving on, because we do have a few interesting chunks to ELT in the modern data stack. How has the evolution of the modern data stack influenced your approach to data management? What is the Paradime philosophy on data management? And can you explain what the cruciality of this is in AI outputs that maybe people don't think about or don't know about?
Yeah, I think so. The modern data stack sort of started evolving somewhere around 2016.
Can we define what would be your description of the modern data stack?
That's a good question. So I think modern, let's say the old data stack, dinosaur data stack would be all the Hadoop and ETL of the world. So I think data as a department or as a discipline has been evolving over the years. And I think the main thing that led to the evolution of what we call the modern data stack at the moment is back in the day, storage was not cheap. Storage was very expensive.
Back in the day being what era?
2001 to 2010, 2012, storage was very expensive. Then innovations in hard disks, SSDs and things like that led to storage being extremely cheap. As a result, AWS S3 was born, and around the same time, Redshift was born. Along that line became that this decoupling of compute and storage. Storage is super cheap, compute is expensive. And that is the start of the modern data stack, because ultimately data storage is the key component of a data stack, so a data warehouse. And this decoupling of storage and compute is what started, in my opinion, the modern data stack, because then Snowflake came around and Hadoop got relegated and Spark came around, and from Spark, Databricks was born, and we are still 2016, right? So around that time, and that sort of started that journey.
Yeah, it was a critical milestone to unlock the next era.
Exactly. And then a lot of other services started to develop around it. And because storage was cheap, there was no point doing inline processing, which is ETL, extract, transform, load. So you would extract the data, transform the data, then you load it into the warehouse. There is no point doing that because you can load all the data into the warehouse because storage is cheap. So then started getting called ELT, extract, load, then transform. And so that's how the whole medallion architecture came into picture. It's okay, I'm going to extract the data, load it into warehouse. That sits in this bronze layer or whatever you call it. This is like a data lake of a swamp of various different data sources. And then you will have the data team who is going to be in charge of transformation, and they are going to transform that data through various different stages into what we will call, let's say, the gold layer, which is what business units will use to inform themselves to make decisions. Now, because of this transformation, dbt also came to make that transformation process simple and easy. And that's the evolution pretty much of, that's what you would call ELT for analytics. Now, fast forward to today, the use cases are no longer just analytics. The use cases are evolving now into AI. So take an example that, let's say, sales teams are having conversations with prospects. That conversation is landing through Gong and is landing into HubSpot or Salesforce. Data team is transforming it. And then you would hope, and data team is transforming it, and then it is giving you a concise summary of all the conversations you've had over the last 7 days, let's say every Friday evening through a Slack message. That means now it's not just batch processing, it's ELT for analytics and then AI. And that's our vision of the whole world, is that ELT for analytics, we've already seen what that looks like, but we see the world as much bigger than that. In the current world, it will expand into AI as well, AI use cases as well, which means AI use cases would be you enrich existing non-structured data with additional information from various different sources, or you would summarize, infer, and create new information based on existing information that you are generating from a business standpoint.
It sounds like the way that you're looking at the ELT potential is the pie's bigger. You're not just like replacing other things, you're unlocking things that currently are maybe out of reach for a lot of organizations.
Exactly. I mean, like the most simplest way of thinking about it is that in an ELT world today, a business generates data, the data organization transforms it, and then it's up to the business to use it or not.
How do you educate your customers on AI's value? And what are some of the misconceptions you often encounter about what's possible?
Great question. So we've started doing a lot of education now with our users and new users that are here.
Yeah.
And I think because a lot of people, especially in the data world, think of AI being a text to SQL sort of thing. I'm going to type something in the chat box, give me sales in US over the last 7 days, but the use cases of AI are much beyond that. So they would be in code generation and things like that. Now, those are some of the use cases that we actually have to educate users on. But fundamentally,
so it's a good entry point.
Good entry point. But then once they start using AI systems, it's like almost like giving someone an F-16 aircraft.
And what are they currently flying?
They're probably driving a car, and you give somebody who is driving a car an F-16 aircraft.
Should we be doing this?
But you got to give them quick refresher to how to use the system. This is something we are seeing, is that some of the misconceptions, for example, is that generative AI is not accurate. There is this whole notion of accuracy.
Yeah.
Because any data ML systems are built around the fact that, it's backtested anything. I give an input, I get an output.
Can I share an anecdote? Mentioned I had an episode with a doctor, German doctor, and founder as well. And he mentioned in the world of healthcare, I mean, this is fair to be honest, but humans are given a wider charity of error than AI. So if a person is like, or doctor, an expert is right 70 or 80% of the time, that's more acceptable than an AI, if you would say, or Gen AI output that's like 90% right. Like that's more penalized. I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is the notion of accuracy.
It's kind of like, as we're saying, in Eastern cultures, an A is not acceptable. You have to have an A+.
Yeah. It's like
whereas other kids, can get away with more.
Yeah, it's like you have an A+, it's like, who else has A+?
You're triggering me.
That's what you hear all the time, right? Me neither, but I became better. But I became better at university. School not very good. But yeah, like that this notion of accuracy it doesn't apply to generative AI, because it's a system that by nature is supposed to give you creative answers, and you get to the right result through what we call incremental prompting, or like question answer.
Interacting with ChatGPT. Didn't like that answer.
Why do you get into this hallucinating loop? You kind of have those
temperature
episodes.
Lower or higher, whichever.
Don't change. But
I mean, like an analyst. Sorry.
But yeah, like you would come into this notion of accuracy, but what you're looking for is relevancy.
Ooh. Okay, break that down. I've never heard it framed like this.
So let's say you are looking for an answer to a problem, and Gen AI systems will give you an answer. The question is the answer relevant to the problem you're solving or not? Because if it is completely off-piste, then it's hallucinated and it's kind of gone in a completely different direction.
And what's the difference between accuracy and relevancy in this context?
What is different is that, let's say, if you say, can you add 2 plus 2? And if the answer is 4, that's accurate. If you say, can you do 2 plus 2? If you just write that and the AI system says, do you want me to divide 2 with 2? That's not relevant. But if it says that, do you want me to sum 2 and 2? That's relevant. And you say, yes, please do that. And it spits out the answer as 4. Now you see you kind of gone through 3 steps and you have arrived at a relevant answer.
And in this case, accurate as well.
In case accurate as well. But if you are looking for, I give an input and I'll get the exact output, that's a little bit far, because you are not evaluating. It's not an evaluation system. It's a generative system. It's generating answers, and it kind of incrementally gets to the right relevant answer you're looking for. So I think there's
how does this relate to what Paradime does? And why you have to have that conversation? Because it seems like a prompting problem for many people.
So our DinoAI Copilot, people would say like, I want code to be generated to join this one model that has users and this other model that has transactions. The thing is that in SQL, there are many different ways you can join stuff. You have not really mentioned
And what
that.
is the question that you're trying to answer?
Like,
to need to join these? Okay.
And if you specify all of that, the code will be relevant. But if you expect that I will just say
Like,
that,
this is what I'm trying to understand. These are the two tables that have the information I need.
And that's, I think, is a coaching that we are doing with our users. There is an incrementality involved.
And what's the response been?
People actually are learning. And I mean, like, the more we share this information.
Are you seeing a change in their behavior?
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
Anything surprising?
I think from a data analyst's, their standpoint, I think they're not used to this framework way of thinking, because they've always been like input output. But this is like input and then you get to the output together with the system, and you're kind of interacting with someone.
Is it a trust thing?
I'm not sure whether it's a trust thing, but there is definitely a lot of, I mean, some of our users is like, I was very cynical at first. I was skeptical that DinoAI will not be able to solve this problem. And I was so positively surprised. Now I use it every day. So there is always like, I know better because I've been working in this field for a while. But then you're like, oh, I'm faced with it almost always happens when they are faced with a hard problem.
I mean, fair.
And there is a time pressure to deliver it.
That's when you crack.
That's when the serendipity happens, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you have very small amount of time and you have a lot of things to deliver. And then it's like, okay, let me just do it this way and see what happens. And it's like, oh my God, this is great. And then they're hooked.
And from what I know of the world of data analysts, that's not a rare situation.
Yeah, true. They're very, because they live in the world of data.
Can you talk about how AI is helping bridge the gap between human readable and machine readable formats? Okay, you know what I mean. And allowing for faster decision making and your philosophical ponderings, if I remember this correctly, on that. It was very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So this sort of this came out when I was having a chat with a friend of mine. So if you forget Gen AI ever existed, the world would be where if you are speaking with someone in sales or marketing, let's say business units in charge of growth or running the business, they would always explain things to you in a human readable format. You'd have a requirement document. Everything is plain English. You speak with somebody in compliance, they will tell you this is what the regulation looks like. You speak with somebody in sales, they will be like, this is how I speak with my customers. This is what they're telling me. This is the objections I'm hearing and things like that. You speak with somebody in RevOps, it's like, okay, this is how the deals are written. This is what the contract looks like. They're all human readable. Now, what somebody would do then is go there, translate that into bits and bobs, turn that into a programmatic language, so that ultimately, let's say if you want to calculate ARR in the company, all the weird contracts that are in place, they have been codified. And then you have the monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue, which is again fed back to the business. Now, what's happening now with Gen is that Claude, OpenAI's GPT models, all of these models are very good at understanding human readable documents, which means that translating these human readable documents into machine readable format, which is code, is super fast and super easy.
Yeah.
Which means that the time that takes to get something that is in someone's mind translated into code is shrinking every day as the models are becoming faster and better. You might do a bespoke deal with an enterprise customer. What would previously take you 2 weeks to reflect that into the data model that pops up into Salesforce as, okay, signed, now can be done in a day, because you give the whole 30-page PDF to someone, that person loads it into AI scans through it, writes the code, and so on, and boom, you're done. And that was like the moment of epiphany I had, which is like this: there is human readable formats, and then there is machine readable formats.
And before the gap was
huge.
And you needed many specialists in between.
You had the business analysts, translators, product managers, project managers, all of these people sort of being that translator.
And now I can even vibe code. I'm learning.
You can, or you can just talk using Whisperflow into a Notion doc.
What is Whisperflow? You mentioned it once already earlier.
It's a dictation tool. So it's an app that sits in your laptop, in your Mac, and you just press a button, talk, and it writes into a Word doc or a Notion doc or whatever it is.
And you copy paste that into Cursor, depending on what you say.
Yeah. And it's like literally you just put your thoughts on a piece of paper, make a PDF, upload, give it to your data analyst. It's like, hey,
Yep.
this is how you do it, you know? And then that person doesn't have to translate that in our tool. For example, in Paradime, you can upload the PDF and it's like using the PDF, just translate everything into something else. Like one of our customers, they were, you will probably like this. They were on Redshift and they were moving to Databricks. They had to transfer and translate the code from Redshift to Databricks. So we found a document which was how Databricks SQL and Redshift SQL, what the translation looks like. It was a 30-page PDF. They uploaded the PDF into DinoAI and all the code was translated in like half a day to a day. Done.
No errors.
And then you run the pipeline, all fine.
That's amazing.
In like 3
So,
days. It just means that migration process.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see that it's the machine readable format, human readable format. And once you kind of abstract that out, that's exactly what's happening right now.
I love that. Final two questions. Where do you see the intersection in the future of data, AI, and entrepreneurship in the next 18 months to like 5 years, whatever horizon resonates with you?
Great question. So I think from my standpoint, the moment if you kind of see like from the data side, what is going to happen is that in the ELT era, we would have data sources being all your CRM, ticketing, support, all of those ERPs being your primary data sources. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have a proliferation of AI data sources because all these conversations we are doing, all the new data that is being generated, all the unstructured data that is being generated, conversational data that is being generated. Now, all these AI companies are going to now become the next source of data, the next system of record. So that is going to be the new world of data sources that the five trends of the world has not built anything about. So all the conversation that goes through Synthesia or through 11 Labs or other teams and systems, they are going to become the new data sources.
Slack. If you're new to a company,
they just kill the Slack API so that you cannot use Slack.
Yeah, I mean, like I think there's so much tribal knowledge.
Slack search is awful. As a result, like
Slack do better.
Please,
we need
like
your
improve
help.
the search, you know. But those are going to be the new data sources. From an entrepreneurship standpoint, you will run way smaller teams. That's the first impact. Or when you are growing,
so you have more runway.
You have more runway. Or as you are growing, you're going to fundamentally hire differently.
Right.
You are not going to hire business analysts or project managers when you are series C, D at the later stages of growth. The fundamental composition of the organization will change because the thing is that there is a lot of things that you don't need people for anymore. So that's going to be the other shift from the entrepreneurship angle, like how an organization like might not have a certain category of employees anymore. So your organizationally you look
but they
very
might
different.
have a different category that doesn't
and different
exist at the
category
moment.
of you might like nowadays we say like you might have GTM engineers and not
I support that, by the way. I heard someone mention like a prediction will have like an HR department for agents.
Yeah, I have heard that. I think I've seen that as well. And it's very likely, I mean, like, I don't know how you feel. It's a very controversial opinion, but I don't think an HR department adds any value.
Yeah. Well, this agent one just made me think of the Minions movie.
Yeah.
Like you just have all your
and they're just running around and doing your job.
Not to infantilize it.
But yeah, like you might not need a certain kind of people anymore. Yeah. So that is going to be from an organizational standpoint. And I think fundamentally what that will do is that the problem, ultimately, if you are a data team or you're a data function, your job is to solve business problems. Your job is essentially grow the business. That's how I think about it. If a data function is there and not helping grow the business, then they are a cost center and they may or may not be there.
Yeah, and we've seen that play out.
Exactly. So as a result, I think in places where if the data function's job is to grow the business, harnessing these new data sources within the new organizational context means that you are no longer be doing just analytics anymore. A data function needs to be able to also cater to AI use cases. And what that typically means is that you start with the business and you feed ultimately data back to the business where they are working, not like a dashboard or a report or etc. It becomes part of their day-to-day workflow. And I think that is super critical to achieve, because if all you need is, as you just articulated 5 minutes ago, which is, I need to find this conversation. That's the problem, exact problem you have at that exact point in time. And you don't need to go and search 100 different places for it. It's actually a data function's job to give you the tools where you can go and find that information in seconds. And I think that's what the future looks like.
My last question. Did you get bored in this interview?
No.
Kaustav, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me here. It was absolute pleasure to be here.
Thanks for listening. If you've gained value from this episode, please drop us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a like on YouTube. See you for the next one.